not at every school that last year's graduates attend the current year's graduation. So I'd like to begin by recognizing members of the class of 2012. I think you guys are up there somewhere. Thank you for your devotion to and love of this school. It is good to see you. And now on to you, the members of the class of 2013. So you're really leaving, huh? Yes, you're leaving, and leaving is going to be difficult for you. You've become accustomed to the ways of Washington Latin, and the ways of the wider world are not always the same as the ways of Washington Latin. For example, next year, Allison in Decatur will not refer to school buildings. Allison will just be a girl's name, and Decatur a small city outside of Atlanta. Similarly, next year if an adult is looking for you, asks your friends for your whereabouts, and eventually gets in a car to come get you, there's a good chance that it won't be Miss Raskin giving you your homework. It will be campus security chasing you down for some And finally, in the future, if a group of people confine you and 90 of your friends to a poorly lit, musty space and let you out for only 20 minutes a day to eat lunch while sitting on the floor of the hallway, those people are most likely not educating you, as we did in 7th grade. They probably kidnapped you. Just don't want you to be confused. Jokes aside, you are leaving, and you have chosen me to speak a few words to you, and for that I am deeply grateful. So here goes. You have arrived at the advent of an adventure. The adventure is now commencing, as the very name of this ceremony indicates. Now, there are many ways to understand and interpret this adventure, many lenses through which to look at it. It is the adventure of leaving a familiar home. It is the adventure of learning new ideas. It is the adventure of meeting new people. It is the adventure of doing your own laundry and answering the question, how many days in a row can I wear that last t-shirt? It is the adventure of discovering how many meals in a row can include Cinnamon Toast Crunch. But the lens that I ask you to peer through today is the one which Miss Smith presented to you at the end of Friday's validation ceremony. She asked all of us there, who are you becoming? And in my mind, there is no more significant question than this one, and no more significant adventure than the adventure of becoming a person. It is an adventure that is sometimes transcendent, thrilling, and sometimes basic and boring. And this question, who will you become, is particularly appropriate for our school and your graduation because it is a classical question. A main focus of classical philosophy was how to live. Ethics, they called it. And the study of ethics peaked in the person of Aristotle, who in his Nicomachean Ethics argued that the chief goal of a human life is to become a certain type of person. So, who will you become? To even ask this question is to acknowledge that you play a role in who you will become. You have a choice. You're an active agent, not a passive sufferer in this adventure. In the classical tradition, and its belief that you do have some say in who you will become, is at odds with two other fairly popular ways of looking at the world. First, the classical tradition denies that you are completely explained by your DNA. You do not robotically follow the arbitrary antics of your atoms. You have a say in who you will become. Secondly, the classical tradition denies that your actions are wholly determined by external factors. You are not entirely enslaved by the chains of the society in which you have grown up. Instead, the classical tradition asserts that you have some degree of free will. There is some part of you that is not controlled by your genes or by your culture. You can call this part of you your soul, or you can call it whatever you like, but it exists. Now, at this point, I was going to offer a couple of proofs for the existence of the soul, but my wife convinced me that this wasn't the best way to spend my time. So I'll move on. But this first point that I'd like to make is that you are, to some degree, responsible for the type of person you'll become. Not entirely, but to some degree. And this is great news, and it is also terrifying news. Now, to return to the question of who you will become, I'm not going to address the question of who you will become as students, both because your identity as students is too narrow for these already narrow remarks, and also because I believe that you have made great strides as students already. For example, just last Friday, Ms. Smith told us that everything boils down to time and space. At which point, one of you turned to me and asked, But wouldn't Plato say that the world of forms exists outside of time and space? Yes, he would. Well done. So I won't talk about who you will become as students, and I also won't talk about who you will become as members of the working world. I won't talk about how to become a CEO, or an accountant, or a programmer, or a doctor. I won't talk about these careers because I don't have the first idea about how to become any of those things. Since I am not any of those things. What I am is a human being, so I'll limit my remarks to that. What kind of human being will you become? Will you become the type of person who someone else would trust with a job, would trust with a friendship, would trust with their heart and their children? As I said before, Aristotle has covered all of this, so I thought I'd simply read to you from his Nicomachean Ethics. Passa techne kai passa methodos homoios de praxis te kai prohairesis ag... Maybe not the best. All I'm actually going to do is ask you 3 questions to get you thinking about the kind of human being you become. First question, how will you use your power? At some point in your life, you will all be in a position of power, either as the official boss of someone, or as a parent, or simply as the person who knows a little more about how things work than someone else. For the purposes of these remarks, when I say position of power, I don't mean position of influence, as much as I mean a time when you are strong and someone else is weak. So what will you do with that power? Will you use it to make the lives of those around you, those weaker than you, easier or harder? More pleasant or more painful? Will you heal or will you hurt? Because there is no neutral position, no such thing as a person in power who has neither a positive nor a negative effect on those below her. Use your power well. And you guys are already good at this. Just last Tuesday, you were at Camp Letts, sitting around a fire in the dark, expressing gratitude for the people around you. And as one of you spoke, she began to cry, overwhelmed by how grateful she was for the people at this school. She was in a place of weakness, and the rest of you thus had some kind of power over her, and over what would happen next. She began to cry so hard that she couldn't speak anymore, although she clearly still had more to say. And as she stopped speaking, cut off by her tears, there was silence. First a second of silence, then 5 seconds of silence, then 10, and then what seemed like an eternity. It was a moment that could easily have gone wrong, because of a cruel word, or even because of an awkward word, springing from the awkwardness of seeing someone in a place of weakness. But no one laughed. No one even coughed. 100 people sat in silence with her. And then one of you, after asking a question quietly, graciously said to the group, "She's not done, so I'm going to speak now, and then she'll finish when she's ready." It was one of the most remarkable moments I've been a part of. Kind and respectful and generous. Become that type of person. Use your power like that. Now, from the weakness of others to the weakness of yourself. My second question is, how will you respond to the weakness, the brokenness, the ugliness that you will find in yourself? Yes, it's true, you're not perfect. There is something that you are bad at. You might gossip about your friends, or forget to square both sides of an equation, or never make it past the first week of your new workout plan. There is some area in which you are weak, and some of you hate this about yourself. So to you I say, when you recognize your weakness, when you have that shell of apparent perfection ripped away, and your weakness stares out at you, do the most difficult thing. Go up to someone you trust and say, "I need help." Or even, "I'm messed up." Don't run from, deny, or hide the unpleasant parts of yourself. So long as you refuse to acknowledge your own weaknesses, 3 consequences follow. First, you never make any progress. The basketball players who never confront the fact that they can't go left never gain the ability to go left. Second, you become unhappy. So long as you hide your failings from others, you will subconsciously believe that others like you only because they don't really know you. And this will make you miserable. Because every moment of happiness and joy will be met in your mind by the reply, "Yeah, but if you really knew me, you wouldn't actually want to spend time with me." And third, you'll despise, or even worse, patronizingly pity, those whose weaknesses are more obvious than yours. If you believe that strength and perfection are the prerequisites for love, you will never be able to genuinely love other people. You'll be trapped into hating them by your own impossible standards. An acceptance of your own weakness is essential for loving other people. This truth is well illustrated in Dostoevsky's brother Karamazov. The hero Alyosha is telling his friend Lise about a man who has done something stupid. And Lise accuses Alyosha of despising the man, of treating him with contempt. Alyosha replies, "No, there's no contempt for him. What sort of contempt could there be when we're all just like him, for we are? I don't know about you, Lise, but I consider myself a quite despicable person in many respects." It is Alyosha's honesty about his own weakness that allows him not to despise the weakness of others. So, be vulnerable, admit your weakness, and ask for help. And now for my third and final question, as you face the bigger question of who will you become. My final question is this: how will you make room for solitude and beauty in your life? Now, solitude and beauty are tricky. They're not basic necessities like food and shelter. You can meander through life without paying much attention to either. And yet, I believe that solitude and beauty are not incidental to who you will become, they are essential. Why? Isn't solitude for losers? Or extreme introverts? Or 3-year-olds who have just pooped in their diaper and don't want anyone to know?
Speaking from experience.
That happens in my house all the time. No. Because as Socrates is one of the first to articulate, in order to really become a person, you must know yourself. And you cannot know yourself unless you are sometimes alone with yourself. And that is solitude. Being alone with yourself, without others, without earbuds, without iPhones. It is terrifying for many of us. But without time alone, you will never be able to distinguish your own voice in person from the noise and confusion of everything around you. And so if only for 10 minutes a week, seek solitude, seek to know yourself. And finally, beauty. There is much ugliness in the world and others and in you, and not just of the physical pimple on your face variety. And the only cure for ugliness is beauty. So find things that are beautiful. Movies, pictures, paintings, songs, places, sports. And as one author says, bathe yourself in them. Seek out beauty and soak in it. And when people ask you why you are listening to that song, looking at that picture, standing in that place, do not tell them that it's useful, just tell them that it's beautiful, and that that is reason enough. So, how will you use your power? How will you respond to your weakness? And how will you make room for solitude and beauty? These questions are just a few to help you along the way, as you seek to answer the biggest question of all: who will you become? My final thought. I would be remiss not to mention that Aristotle ends his Ethics by saying something like the following. Having investigated what kind of people we should become, I've become aware that creating a certain type of city, a certain type of polis, a certain type of home, is a necessary first step to becoming a certain type of person. You all refer to Latin as your home so often. Latin has been your polis and your community. And pieces of the people that you have already become have their roots in your time at Latin. It has shaped you. You would not be who you are without Latin. But even more importantly for the present occasion, the home that is Latin, the polis of Latin, the community of Latin, could not have been created without you. This school would not be the fun, engaging, intellectual, curious, and kind place that it is without you. Nor would I be who I am